And I read something this morning about Big Z possibly coming back. I thought that was one of the most impactful signings of the year on any team.
Yeah.
Talk about pulling a rabbit out of your hat. I love his game, and it showed up in Detroit. So, what's it look like out on the edge?
Yeah, so Aiden looks great, man. He's been out there in OTAs. Really didn't expect anything else. You never truly know because you don't have a crystal ball,
Yeah,
but just knowing how that guy's wired and how he attacks things and how in tune he is with his body, it did not surprise me. I mean, he's out there. He looks explosive. He's changing direction. I mean, he looks really good, man. And then we brought back Marcus Davenport on a one
like
year deal.
Davenport.
He was playing really good football for us before he unfortunately got hurt, man. And so hopefully he gets better luck on his side. And so, and he's been out there, and I would say he looks just as good, man. Like he has been, he's his body is feeling great. His body looks great, man, and he had a good summer as well in terms of the OTAs. And then we brought Al Qadim Muhammad back that we signed last year, who logged some good snaps for us, played good football, plays hard. He's physical. He'll set edges, man. He plays with a lot of effort. And then we were able to draft Ahmed Hassanein from Boise in the 6th round, and he's just another guy. He's got some work to do from a developmental standpoint, just like they all do. But he's not some fish out of water, just raw, don't know what he's doing out there. I mean, when you look at his production, he had the most in terms of sacks and pressures combined the past 2 years. He had the most production out of all the edge rushers in that class, and just so happens that he plays with his hair on fire as well. So we feel good about where we're at that position.
All right, so that was Brad Holmes talking to Chris Long, and I feel like this vindicates what I said on a previous show. And this isn't what I think, and this isn't me wanting to be right. This is just me getting into the mind of Brad Holmes. I think he views Za'Darius Smith as a luxury. And you could, if you wanted to, interpret this as we're not going to talk about Za'Darius Smith. We're going to kind of skirt the question. We're only going to talk about the guys who are in-house for the Lions right now. And I get that. But the way he was propping up Marcus Davenport, the way that he was propping up AQM, Hassanine, I think that Brad Holmes feels like what they have in-house right now is enough. Notice, he completely basically glossed over the fact that Marcus Davenport was hurt. All he saw was somebody who was playing good football for the Lions in all 2 games, but that's all that he really sees. He completely glossed over the fact that he got AQM from the practice squad. All he sees is that when AQM was up there and playing, that he did some good things. He doesn't see Ahmad Hassanin as like another Giovanni Manu. I think he sees Hassanin as somebody who it's like, yeah, you guys think he's raw because he didn't play football until later than life. He was born in Egypt, etc., etc. But this is a guy that had insane production in college. And obviously when talking about Aiden, we all know what the type of superstar that he is. So I think Brad Holmes is comfortable with or without Za'Darius Smith. I still think Z is more essential than some people do, but Brad Holmes feels comfortable, and I think that this completely confirms everything that I said. That Brad Holmes, he's fine with or without Za'Darius Smith.
And that was one of the things that we talked about, maybe about a month and a half ago, and we said, you know what, this is his plan. This is what he's effectively defensive line wise. He's running back what he started last year with, proving that he believes in his vision and that injuries aren't necessarily one of his larger determining factors. I would think, hey, let's go with some more healthy players. And we've seen him go and not necessarily target, but at least draft some of those guys. But I now realize and recognize even more so, I don't think it had anything really to do with the injury history. If the doctors believe that they're going to be good, no matter what their past is, I believe that Brad Holmes is good to go. And so you look at the signings he's done, and you look at the people he paid, it's our guys, but it's guys who are coming back from injuries and such. That's the only component of it that makes me just a little bit concerned. But again, in a vacuum, this team won. This team has been winning. They've only been trending up underneath Brad Holmes, and so far the things that we believe would trip them up just haven't. Do I believe Za'Darius needs to be on this team? Absolutely. Part of me wonders, though, how much of it is Brad, like, all right, me and Z already talked. We already know what the deal is. I addressed this with people already, so they know, like, what it is. Because I do believe that there is a number that works for the Lions that might not work for Big Z. But if Big Z is like, you know what, we could do something special this year, we already know that Brad said that they did talk. And so I do wonder how much of that goes into what he would talk about. Because you're right. He went out of his way, it almost seemed like. And I feel bad saying going out of his way because it's his guys, it's his team.
Yeah.
And you're a month and a half away from the first preseason game. Think about that. So I think that he is going to effectively do what he's always done. They've been truthful. They've shown the light where they believe it needs to be shined. And largely those notions have come to truth. So if he's saying that these guys are guys that are going to go out there and be dogs of a different nature, even than what we expected and even more than what we saw in the past, we're to the point where it's like, all right, we got to trust in Brad. But you're right. For there to be no mention of Za'Darius Smith, it's just like, man, especially with, what we hear out of Za'Darius Smith. We see him making all the overtures. We see him representing Detroit on national stages and out when he's with Cash Doll. And when he was asked point blank period about it, he said it's going to happen soon. So that's what makes me believe maybe they have some type of, hey, this is what we could make happen if this were to happen. And if that's the case, good on Brad Holmes for having his vision, having his plan, because I do believe this. When you're talking about building some long-term success, you really want a system that other players are going to know and respect from the beginning, even if it doesn't jive with them. And I do believe that this sets a precedence with other players that they may have to bring in, may sign, may come from the outside, and you're going to have to play some type of ball with Brad Holmes because of, look, you would see other people when the Patriots and how they viewed their team, even though they were winning Super Bowls, they still put a premium on their team. And so if you were going to come there, sometimes you knew, I got to cut the deal to come there. I know what I'm stepping into. I do hope that if Brad Holmes is doing that, I tip the cap to him.
Yeah, if Brad Holmes is able to get this done for a cheaper deal than before, that's genius level GMing. And I will come here the next day and glaze Brad Holmes to the like he's a Krispy Kreme donut.
But you do believe that he should go kind of above, a little bit above?
I mean,
as it relates to re-signing Za'Darius Smith, because that's the tough part. Like I believe, like you said, and we bantered this before, that Brad believes in his defensive line. Even though I'm just like, man, Big Z is sitting right there.
I do. I think that here's what I think. I think that if Za'Darius Smith is going to come here, that it's going to be at a bit of a hometown discount for him. But I also think, and I get it, he hasn't been signed anywhere else, so this might not be the most strong argument, but I don't think that he necessarily has to accept something that is below what he's earned, because as I've laid out before, in the last 3 seasons, when you combine all of them, over a 15% pressure rate, had a great season last year, 9 sacks, half of the season he was as the edge rusher 1, was very effective opposite Myles Garrett. The year before, in 2023, was very effective, I think over 10 sacks in 2022 opposite Danielle Hunter. He's a damn good player. He could probably get a more expensive deal. But I do think that he wants to play for the Lions more than damn near anything. And we love him for that.
And with Big Z, I do want to say this, because we did say this before. That we believe is the Super Bowl winning move.
Yeah.
Not that we believe that the Lions aren't equipped right now
100%.
to get there. And so I do want to, I want to kind of paint that picture as I kind of go to the chat. There's some in here that I dive with. Nick Hedigan. Well, if you look at the Lions before injuries, they were up 20 plus at halftime each game. If you look at the Lions after the injury, there were games where they were still going out there and beating teams to a pulp. And that's where I do wonder sometimes if my perspective on this thing as it relates to what Brad should do and what the Detroit Lions need. I just wonder, like, is it as easy as what Brad is making it out to be, or is it more akin to what we're talking about? Because I do know this. I believe that a more effective pass rush helps this Detroit Lions team. I'm not even saying to go out there right now and get Hendricks, and even though if you can make that happen, you make that happen. Then you're talking about one of the best, bookends in football, and as you've put it before, maybe in history.
Yeah.
But if you can at least go out there and get not just depth, but a guy who really led this unit when everything else around him was falling down, and he wants to be here, that's what I'm just like, man, just make it happen. But how much do we need to put into or view what this Lions team did underneath Brad Holmes, underneath Dan Campbell, despite the injuries, as well as the year before when they were a lot more healthy, they have performed.
Brad Holmes is an excellent GM. He's top 5 in the NFL. I'd personally have him at 4, but it doesn't matter my rankings. He's firmly cemented in the top 5. And things seem to work out. Not everything, obviously, but the vast majority seems to work out. And I'm ready to say this on June 17th. And this isn't like a super profound statement, but the more I hear Brad Holmes talk, the more I'm willing to just like go out on a limb. I think Marcus Davenport actually has a big year. Not like 15 sacks as a bookend, but plays between 10 and 14 games and gets at least 5 sacks. And if he does that, and this is Brad, imagine Brad Holmes, and you know that I've talked about how sometimes I don't love his pettiness. Imagine how he's going to be with the media if that happens, because Marcus Davenport is making nothing. It's incentive laden, but even if he hits the incentives, it's not going to be an expensive contract. For some reason, the more this goes on, the more I'm like, Marcus Davenport might actually have a big impact on this team. I hope he does.
I see L in the chat, and there's a couple questions that I saw pop up through this. And L says, do you guys think Brad and Dan want to see a Lions training camp without Z to gauge the talent to see if the younger or unknown talent is sufficient or not? Because it wouldn't be good to sign Z, then cut him. And I understand that, but even if these guys are good enough, I still don't understand the notion of not having Big Z here. A guy that was just a part of this team, a part of this culture, fit in here, proved that he could handle even more responsibility if it was given to him. These are knowns right now. I have no problem with figuring out what else is there and letting the vet kind of just do his thing until you get closer to the season. But for everything that we know about Za'Darius Smith, we're talking about one of the better pass rushers in the league. Flannel has gone through all the stats for you guys, and we got to see him live and in person. And he's sitting at home. And this is where I saw some people in the chat say, you know what, and what up though with Detroit Gunny is one of those guys like who stated, I haven't heard any news or even a single rumor about Za'Darius Smith talking to even anybody else. So I do wonder how much, like I said, how much of that original conversation where Brad discussed Za'Darius Smith, I wonder how much that's just that's what the deal is. There's a number out there, and Big Z has just been kind of chilling, living his life, kind of knowing I can always take this number, and it just keeps everything mellow because the only rumors we have is between him and the Lions.
He wants to be here.
Yeah.
He really wants to be here. I see this from I'm salty. Again, thank you for the call yesterday. Davenport equals Mosley. And I'll say this. There's a reason.
Don't say that.
Well,
it can't work out that way.
That's not unfair, though, at this
It's
point.
not.
And that's why I wanted to give that credence, because that was one of the reasons why before Marcus Davenport was re-signed, I'd thought about it as, there's no way. How can you trust this guy to stay healthy? But the more I keep hearing from Brad Holmes, the more nothing really has gotten done, even in terms of drafting and free agency, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a fact. I'm like, Brad Holmes really believes in Marcus Davenport like he could potentially be one of the more effective bookends in the NFL. And to be honest, there might be some truth to that, but with Davenport, he's never really been able to stay healthy, and he's never really been a high snap guy. That's one of the reasons I'd like Big Z in, but
I mean, it could be
Chase.
Dan too that has the faith in Davenport coming from New Orleans. They was part of the staff when they drafted him too. This could be Dan telling Brad, "Hey, this guy has the motor, he has the skills. If he's healthy, he can be the impact player that we need on this team." So I think everyone's putting all of their eggs in the Brad basket when realistically, like the link between Davenport and this team is through Dan Campbell. So, I mean, it could be Dan Campbell who's championing for Marcus Davenport more than anything. Yeah, we don't really know.
And I know the one thing that even people who dislike the move or believe, oh, we should have gone with somebody more healthy, the one place I know we all kumbaya is believing this. If he's healthy, he's going to ball. That we know.
It's going to be effective.
He's going to be effective. Well, that's probably, thank you, that's probably more appropriate.
Yeah.
He's going to be effective. And to me, I do know this. If this line is healthy and when they get into like week 5 and week 6, when last year we know that's when they began to really hit the rhythm as a team, this team is going to be, they're going to be really, really flipping good. That's the component of it where I keep trying to pull myself back off of the edge because I realize, all right, this team still has so much here. And you're right. You know, when you pull into the effect the Dan Campbell of it all, I can't overlook that. Dan Campbell has been very, very hands-on with his coaches and very, very hands-on with the personnel that he utilizes. And so I'm hoping that we get Davenport. I'm seeing some people in the chat that are kind of just as nervously optimistic as we're kind of getting. I'm seeing Greg. Maybe Davenport will surprise me.
Yeah, maybe, like I said, it would be a surprise. But at the end of the day, like the more time passes, the more I'm like, maybe it does work. And at Chase, that was a good pull by you, because when you look at Marcus Davenport's career, his second most productive season, this was 2019. He actually had 6 sacks and 16 quarterback hits, which 16 quarterback hits is tied for his career high. Dan Campbell was on that staff. So Dan Campbell is acutely aware of what Marcus Davenport can be when he plays not a full season, but 13 games. We'd be happy with that. And it was a long time ago, don't get me wrong. But Davenport, he was I barely count that he played last year, but I guess he was effective in those 2 games. Not trying to be condescending, it's what happened.
Let's take a quick one and come back. There's some good comments here, including Sean Hart.
And we got to get to JB because he is
he's
Mr. Skeptical over there. Don't get me wrong, I've been there a long time, and I still kind of am. But we got to get JB Smooth's opinion on this.
Yeah, I definitely do. And I see Sean Hart. I think people sleep on Pascal. He's not going to be an all-pro. Maybe we talk a little bit more about these other